Now, I was going to title this particular broadcast the 40%. Why 40%? Well, there's a number of reasons. The number 40 keeps cropping up in Scottish politics, and it's a strange coincidence. First of all, approximately 40% of Labour voters intended to vote for independence at the last time this opinion was measured. Also, around 39% of SNP members are getting a bit cross with the SNP's leadership. And now we've heard that 40 SNP branches across Scotland are planning not to ambush John Swinney, but to put forward a new motion calling on him to change his policy for the next general election. Now, there are multiple meetings planned for the branch membership of the SNP, with one in Glasgow, one in Perth, and in fact all over the place. And this resolution is going to be debated by branch members. Now, there appears to be a bit of a battle going on in the SNP at the moment between those who are running the party, i.e. John Swinney and his administration at Holyrood, and the membership at large. And this is a battle of internal democracy which is occurring within the party. The SNP membership wants to retain the democratic model, which allows party members at conference to produce motions and amendments to party policies which are being proposed for debate at their conference. Now, normally they would have got 7 weeks' notice of the conference and the motions which were being proposed by the parliamentary party. This time they only got 3 weeks, so they've been largely ambushed by the party hierarchy and have not had time to prepare their own cases for the various motions they want debated at the conference, which is coming up, I think, in October. So there are various meetings being proposed by branch membership across the country, culminating one in, I think, in September in Glasgow, where I think Glasgow Kelvin SNP branch is proposing to have a big meeting to discuss the ideas that they want to see debated at conference. Now, at the moment, it doesn't look from the Commons agenda set out by Mr. Swinney's group at Holyrood as though anything to do with independence is going to be included in the 2026 manifesto. And this is the thing which is irritating so many people. Now, as I mentioned, 40% of Labour voters intended to vote for independence when that was last measured. What the SNP membership is proposing is that they put independence front and centre, and also that there is a mechanism put in place to monitor the polls in Scotland to raise the support for independence to a measurably high level and maintain that watchfulness over the polls for a period of time, which would then indicate that the support for independence was high enough that the SNP would then include independence in their manifesto for 2026. Now, it's an attempt, at least by SNP branch members, to do something to nudge Mr. Swinney away from his navel-gazing kinds of policies, the kind of nitpicking and minutiae of daily governance which seems to characterise Mr. Swinney's current offering of a manifesto for next year's general elections in Holyrood. So there are a lot of things going on there, and this figure of 39%, 40% is a recurring theme, both in the SNP at large, in its membership, and also across the political spectrum in Scotland. Now, if 40% of Labour voters are intending to vote for independence, given the chance, then what about the rest of us who may be not in any party at all? Current polling suggests that independence support is in the low 50s, although that will be an underestimate. And getting that figure to budge upwards is going to be a pretty difficult task, considering that the British news media manages the polling itself, and they are the ones who commission polling from their own friendly pollsters. And we know where that leads. It tends to lead to an underreporting of independence support. So at the moment, the SNP seems to be mired in this internal conflict between what I would term a sort of leadership cabal, which determines what happens in the party, and the broader membership of the SNP, which wants to hang on to the internal democratic process of party branches making amendments and making new arguments to be discussed at the upcoming conference of the SNP, which I believe is coming up in October. So there is a race going on within the party. Now, in the meantime, the mood music has been set by the British media, who are all over the recent publication of Nicola Sturgeon's book on her life. And they are literally tearing her apart in front of her very eyes. And she's made a few, I think, rather strange statements. The fact that she was surprised to see blue tents parked outside her house, and then was even more surprised and upset to be arrested alongside her husband Peter Murrell for alleged embezzlement of £600,000 of funding, which was allegedly earmarked for an independence campaign. All goes to show you that she was apparently blindsided by the United Kingdom launching a smear campaign against her, because she was later exonerated and was released without charge. Peter Murrell has kind of disappeared from view. He has still to hear of a court date for his alleged involvement in this alleged crime, which allegedly happened. Nobody really knows whether it happened or not. But Ms Sturgeon has separated from Mr Murrell, and there are now questions of why she separated. Was it just to do with the fact that there was this embezzlement cloud hanging over both of them, or was there something deeper there? Most of the chattering classes in Edinburgh were already aware that Mr Murrell and Ms Sturgeon had married, let's say, for convenience rather than any other reason. And I think Nicola herself actually hinted that sexual orientation, as far as she was concerned, was not binary. Now, that was an interesting comment, and has again hinted at all kinds of what would you say? I think background truths here, that Nicola Sturgeon may not be heterosexual. Now, that really doesn't matter in the slightest in terms of politics, her career, what she does and what she doesn't do. But she has largely taken over the headlines and deflected our attention away from what is important at the moment, which is that, as you may or may not be aware, Salvo has already launched a campaign to have Scotland recognised at the UN as a non-self-governing territory, in other words, a colony of England. And in doing that, if they can secure the United Nations ruling on that we are a colony, then it makes it possible for any Scottish government at all, of any stripe whatsoever, to hold a referendum on independence without asking permission from the English state. Now, I've heard all sorts of counter-arguments, and most recently from Paul Kavanagh-Mawson, who doesn't believe that this route holds out much hope. And he cites lots of other attempts at obtaining non-self-governing status from the UN by other small territories seeking independence, and how the UN either ignored them, or, having found a ruling, these countries are largely ignored by everybody else. Now, that's entirely true, that these things have happened. Scotland's case is very different. We're not an island in the middle of the Pacific. We're not a far-flung colony of England that's located somewhere else on the planet. We're right next door. But our status is murky, to say the least. The English state claims that we are a territory within a unitary state, something which everybody here disputes, that we are still a nation, that we still have the right to self-determination, which was recognised by England in its own parliament as recently as 2018. And so the fact that we have the right to self-determination really defines us as a colony, because if we didn't have the right to self-determination, we would be a part of Greater England, which of course we aren't. So the UN, as it stands at the moment, is still one piece in a jigsaw puzzle. Salvo has intimated that it plans to return to the UN next month with further evidence to support its application. for non-self-governing territorial status. And it remains to be seen whether they are successful. There are other submissions to be made in the future, in the next few months, by Salvo in a number of visits to the UN. So this is an ongoing process. It's not ended with just a single approach. So at the present time, the British state is trying to distract us from our continued push towards independence by promoting this entire Nicola Sturgeon freak show, which is the best way I can describe it, of trying to humiliate and embarrass the women on British television. And they seem to be doing a pretty good job of it so far. On the other hand, John Swinney has largely escaped this kind of scrutiny completely, and is blithely going about the business of trying to win an election based on the minutiae of managing Scotland as a territory of the United Kingdom rather than seeking independence. And I hope to God that the party structure within the SNP is successful in finally doing something to include independence front and centre, right in the centre of the SNP's policy for the next general election. Otherwise, I would predict they are going to lose seats, because the people who traditionally vote for the SNP are not always SNP members. In fact, mostly they are pro-independence campaigners who haven't got a choice, really. The SNP is still the largest independence party and the one most capable of doing something to advance our cause towards independence. The smaller parties just simply don't have the traction because of the political system designed by England that prevents that from happening at Holyrood. So we depend on the SNP to get us closer to our goal of independence. And right now, the battle within the party is about to hot up. It'll be interesting to see what happens next. But I would say in the next couple of days, the little storm in a teacup over Nicola Sturgeon's book will finally move off the front pages of the newspapers and out of the glare publicity, where it really has no place. It's just, as I say, a freak show. It's an opportunity for the British media to try to humiliate Nicola Sturgeon again, and unfortunately they're succeeding. Anyway, that is it from Inde-Car today. I hope you've enjoyed the programme's content. Please continue to like, subscribe, comment, ring the notification bell so that you know when I'm going live. And if you can afford to, try to make a contribution to my donation fund on PayPal. Let me know if you have trouble with that. There are other ways to donate if you wish to do so. In the meantime, keep the faith, and I will see you next time on Inde-Car. Bye for now.